During shopping, my 8-year-old clutched my hand and said, "Mom, quickly, to the bathroom." In the stall, she whispered, "Don't move, look." I bent down and froze in horror. I didn't cry. I took action. 3 hours later, my mother-in-law went pale because I used to laugh at kids' fears. Not out loud, not cruelly, just the quiet adult kind of amusement. Monsters under the bed, shadows in the hallway. Someone's watching me. Sure, honey. Then one Sunday, I was crouched on a sticky bathroom floor in a mall outside Columbus, Ohio, holding my 8-year-old's hand while polished black shoes stopped in front of our stall, and a man's voice, low and calm, said into his phone, "Yeah, mother and daughter. The girl's about 8. They've got shopping bags. Blue dress." Blue dress. My daughter had picked it out 10 minutes earlier. It was in our bag. That's when the cute childhood fears category died. Abby's grip on my fingers was so tight it hurt. She didn't look at me. She didn't need to. She put a finger to her lips like we were in a movie. Except in movies, the bathroom floor isn't tacky, and your heart doesn't try to climb out through your throat. "Don't move," she whispered. So I didn't. I watched the shoes through the gap under the stall door. Slow steps. Stop. Slow steps. Stop. Like he was checking each stall, one by one. Like he had time. The shoes paused right in front of ours. Abby's breath disappeared. Mine too. Then the shoes moved on again, and the voice continued like he was giving a weather report. "They should have come this way. If they didn't leave already, yeah. I'll keep looking." My brain tried to catch up. Man in a women's restroom, looking for us, describing our shopping bags. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a hunt. I pulled my phone out with shaking hands and hit record because if there's one thing working in healthcare teaches you, it's this. If it isn't documented, it didn't happen. The shoes circled once more, then stopped. A stall door creaked. Another creaked. Abby's eyes went huge. That's when I did the only thing I could do without giving us away. I called 911. Not a dramatic call. No screaming. Just woman's restroom, man inside. Following us. 8-year-old with me. Please. The response came fast. "Stay where you are. Officers are on the way. Notify mall security if you can safely." Mall security. Bless the American tradition of outsourcing panic to a guy in a polo shirt. But at least it was something. When the shoes drifted toward the sinks, I grabbed Abby and we slipped out like smoke, fast, quiet, bags clutched tight. We ran straight to the security office like our lives had a loyalty card. The guard looked skeptical. Of course he did. 2 women bursting in with shopping bags and wild eyes isn't credible. It's Black Friday energy. "What's going on?" he asked, already bracing for a complaint about a coupon. Abby, trembling, described the man perfectly. The shoes, the suit, the camera strap. And then I played the audio. His face changed in real time. "That's not normal," he said. "No kidding." He pulled up the cameras. We watched the footage like it was a horror film with a budget. And there he was, mid-40s, dark suit, neat hair, holding a small camera like it was an accessory, not a weapon. He walked with the confidence of someone who believed rules were for other people. Security tracked him through the building. 30 minutes later, they found him. He didn't run. He didn't even look surprised. When the guard questioned him, the man calmly flashed a plastic card. "I'm Brian Douglas Hartman," he said. "Licensed private investigator. I'm conducting an investigation." "What investigation?" the guard asked. "I can't disclose that," Hartman replied smoothly. Confidentiality. And then he said something that should have been funny, except it wasn't. But I'm not doing anything illegal. A PI, in a women's restroom, searching for a mother and child. Sure. Security called the police anyway, because even in America, a badge you bought online doesn't magically excuse you from common sense. A cruiser arrived about 20 minutes later. An officer took one look at Abby and softened. Then he looked at Hartman and didn't soften at all. Hartman was escorted out. And that's when my phone rang. Mike, my brother-in-law. Kate, he said, breathless. Are you okay? I heard something happened. I blinked. Mike? How do you know? I saw it online, he said quickly. People were posting. A suspicious guy at the mall. I thought it might be you. It had been less than an hour. Maybe in the age of neighborhood apps and local Facebook groups, that wasn't impossible, but it still landed wrong, because Mike always seemed to know things, before I told him. I'm coming, he said. Where are you? We're with police, I answered. They want statements at the station, but I can drive myself. I'm coming anyway. He hung up before I could argue. Of course he did. 2 years earlier, my husband David died in a car crash. 1 minute you're arguing about whether to buy name-brand cereal. The next, you're signing forms you can't read through tears. After that, everything in my life became a schedule. Shifts, bills, school pickup, survival with occasional spaghetti. I'm a nurse. 12-hour shifts. The kind where you come home and your bones feel borrowed. Abby and I made a routine out of the wreckage. Homework at the kitchen table, cartoons after dinner, spaghetti night whenever we needed comfort we could chew. David loved tomato sauce. He used to grow basil in a little planter box on our balcony like it was a sacred ritual. One evening at the grocery store, Abby said casually, pushing the cart like she owned the place, I have a math test tomorrow. Are you ready? I asked, because that's what moms do when they're trying not to think about everything else. I'm fine, she said. Then, quieter. But Grandma Maggie keeps asking if school is hard, like she wants me to say yes. I paused in the rice aisle. My mother-in-law, Margaret Louise Miller, Grandma Maggie to Abby, had been interested lately. Not the normal grandma interested, the measuring kind. Does your mom help you? Is she home much? Does she leave you alone? She always said it like concern, but it tasted like something else. When we got home, Abby helped me with dinner, peeling tomatoes while I tried not to drown in memories. Dad would like this, she said softly. I swallowed. Yeah, he would. Let's buy basil next time, she added. The kind Dad grew. I nodded, because saying no to that would have felt like erasing him. We were finally sitting down to eat when the doorbell rang. It was around 8, late enough that you don't expect company unless it's trouble. I opened the door and found Mike standing there with a small bouquet of flowers, like this was normal. Hey, he said gently. I just wanted to check on you two. Mike was David's younger brother, recently divorced, still carrying that lonely look like a coat he couldn't take off. Abby squealed because she loved people before she learned they could be complicated. Mike lifted her into his arms and handed her a little box. Inside was a plush character from her favorite cartoon. She lit up. I didn't. Because we hadn't told Mike her favorite character. Not really. Not enough for him to know exactly which one to buy. That night, after Abby fell asleep, I sat alone with my coffee and tried to be fair. He's lonely. He misses his brother. He misses having a family. Fine. But then his visits became scheduled. Every day around 6, the doorbell rang. like Mike had set an alarm. He always brought something: candy, school supplies, another toy. At first I was grateful, then I was tired. By the second week, Abby started sighing when the bell rang. "He's here again," she'd whisper, and her smile would dim just a little. Mike would sit on the couch and talk about how empty his apartment felt, how we were a bright spot, how David would have wanted him to watch over us. That line, "David would have wanted," became his master key. He used it on every locked door. I tried once, carefully. "Mike, maybe not every day," I said, aiming for kind instead of harsh. "We're exhausted sometimes." He blinked, like the idea offended him. Then he apologized, and showed up the next day anyway. Of course he did. One night he said, casually, like he was reading off a calendar, "Can I come watch Abby rehearse her class presentation? Next Thursday. 2:00, right?" My skin went cold. "How do you know the day and time?" I asked. "Abby told me," he said, smiling. I looked at Abby. She looked confused. "I didn't," she said slowly. Mike laughed awkwardly. "Oh, maybe I heard it another way." "Another way." "Sure." He showed up at school anyway, sat in the auditorium among the parents like he belonged there, like he was filling David's seat. After Abby presented, Mike handed her a tiny bouquet. She said thank you, politely. In the car, on the way home, Abby stared out the window and whispered, "Mom, I get tired when Uncle Mike comes." "Why, honey?" She hesitated. "It feels like he's watching me, like he knows everything I love. But I don't remember telling him." Kids don't have a filter. They also don't have a reason to lie about that. So I started watching Mike. The way his eyes moved around our living room, the way he picked up framed photos and held them a second too long, the way he looked at Abby's schoolwork like it was evidence. One afternoon, he mentioned something that hadn't even been discussed in our house yet. "Oh, Abby must be excited for the zoo field trip next month," he said with a grin. "Packing lunches will be a challenge, huh?" I froze. The zoo flyer had been handed out the day before. It was on Abby's desk under a stack of papers. I hadn't even read it yet. "Where did you hear that?" I asked carefully. "From Abby," he said quickly. Abby's head snapped up. "I didn't tell him." Silence filled the room. Mike laughed, forced. "I must have mixed it up." No, he didn't. That night I noticed something else. The school papers in Abby's desk were arranged. Not messy, not stuffed. Organized. "Did you clean your drawers?" I asked her. She shook her head. "No." The next day, I watched from the second-floor window as Mike left. He paused outside, turned, and stared up into our living room window like he was checking something. My stomach dropped. Abby came up behind me and whispered, "Mom, Uncle Mike is weird, right?" "What makes you think that?" "He always asks where we're going, when you work, if we'll be home Saturday. Why does he need to know?" Then came the moment that broke my last attempt at maybe I'm overreacting. Mike asked for a spare key. "Just in case," he said. "If something happens to you, I need access. I'm family." "No," I said immediately. He frowned. "Your neighbor isn't family." "Valerie has helped us for years," I snapped, "and she doesn't demand keys." Mike's voice sharpened. "David would want me to take care of this." Something inside me snapped right back. "Don't use my husband as leverage," I said. That's when Abby, barely audible, said, "Uncle, you're kind of scary." For a split second, Mike's face changed, hard, almost hungry. Then it smoothed out again into a smile. "Scary uncle just wants to protect you," he said sweetly. Abby moved behind me. Her instinct knew something my grief kept trying to deny. The mall trip was supposed to be a break. New clothes, because Abby was growing like she had a secret contract with time. Milkshakes, a normal Sunday. She found the blue dress and spun in the fitting room like the world was safe again. We walked through the stores, bags getting heavier. We sat at the food court with milkshakes and fries, and Abby sighed happily. "This is fun," she said. "When Uncle Mike isn't around, we can relax." That one hurt, because she was 8, and she shouldn't have needed relaxing as a concept tied to an adult relative. Then she said something that turned my stomach. "Uncle Mike came by when you weren't home," she said quietly. "What?" "Last Wednesday. He was outside our building when I got home from school. He asked if you were back yet. I told him I was going to Ms. Valerie's after. He said, okay. Then he left." Wednesday was my late shift. I didn't get home until after 9. Mike shouldn't have known Abby would be alone at pickup, or that she'd be going to Valerie's. I felt cold all over. We threw away our empty cups and headed for the exit. That's when Abby stopped walking. "Mom," she whispered. Her face went white. "That man." I followed her gaze. A man at the food court. Dark suit. Black shoes. "Abby," I started. "Bathroom," she said urgently. "Now!" The panic in her voice wasn't normal. It wasn't dramatic. It was survival. So we moved. Fast. She pulled me into the women's restroom and stopped again at the door like she couldn't breathe. "Come with me," she begged. "It's okay." I tried. "No. Together." So we went into one stall. Together. 2 bodies, 1 cramped space. My shopping bags pressed against my knees, her hand shaking in mine. Then the shoes came. And the voice came. And the blue dress became proof we were being tracked. You already know what happened next, because that's where this story started. But here's what happened after. We got out, we ran, we showed security, we found Hartman, and then we went to the police station. At the station, the fluorescent lights made everything look worse. Even my own hands. Abby sat beside me, quiet, holding my sleeve like it was the only stable thing in the room. Hartman sat across the hallway, still calm, still polished. Like this was an appointment, not a crime. Mike showed up before we were even done giving our statement. His face was pale. He rushed to Abby first, crouching to her level. "Are you okay?" he asked. Abby nodded, but she didn't move toward him. That was new. A detective interviewed Hartman. At first, Hartman didn't want to talk. Then the detective explained, calmly, what entering a women's restroom to pursue a child looks like in court. Hartman's confidence cracked. Finally, he said it. "I was hired," he admitted. "Hired by who?" the detective asked. "A woman named Margaret Louise Miller." My ears rang. My mother-in-law. My hands went numb. "Why would she hire you?" the detective continued. Hartman swallowed. "To document Catherine Miller's daily life," he said. "To assess parenting, whether the child is being neglected because the mother works too much." I stood up so fast my chair scraped the floor. "What does that even mean?" I snapped. Hartman looked down. "She believed the mother was unfit. She wanted evidence for a custody petition." Custody. For my daughter. From me. Because I work. Because I'm tired. Because my husband died and I didn't fall apart politely enough. Mike stared like he'd been punched. "No," he said. "No, my mom wouldn't." The detective's eyes went sharp. "Mr. Miller," he said, "you've been at Ms. Miller's home often. You've asked about schedules, school events, plans." Mike opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "I was worried," he said finally, "about my sister-in-law and my niece." "Worried about what?" the detective asked. Mike froze, and then Abby spoke. Soft. Clear. "I saw that man at Grandma Maggie's house," Abby said. The room went still. The detective turned gently. "When, Abby?" "2 weeks ago," she said. "When I visited. He was talking to her." Hartman flinched. Because children don't lie when they're not trying to protect anyone. The detective asked Hartman how many times he'd met Margaret. 3, Hartman admitted. "Initial instructions, then an update, then more instructions." "What additional instructions?" the detective asked. "More photos," Hartman said. "Try to record conversations. Find out if Catherine has habits, connections, anything compromising." My stomach turned. Our lives, our grocery runs, our school pickups, my late shifts, Abby's blue dress, all filed away like evidence. Then the detective brought in a folder. Inside were dozens of photos. Me and Abby at the park, me picking her up after school, me carrying groceries, me laughing with her on a bench like I didn't know I was being watched. There were printouts of my social media tags, copies of my work schedules pulled from somewhere in the hospital system where someone shouldn't have been pulling them, and then the worst part, a typed plan, a checklist of how to make me look like a negligent mother, overworked, emotionally unstable after grief, frequently absent, lack of supervision. There was also a neat little section on Margaret, stable income, a paid-off condo, a clean, structured environment. Deep interest in the child's education. Like parenting was a resume contest. Mike stared at the pages, shaking. "My mom, she was really going to do this," he whispered. "Was she using me?" The detective didn't answer for him. Mike looked at me, desperate. "Kate," he said, voice breaking, "I swear I didn't know." I wanted to believe him. I also wanted to throw him out of my life like a burning object. Both feelings existed at the same time. Because grief makes your heart messy. Margaret came to the station the next day. She cried immediately, the kind of crying that arrives on purpose. "My Abby," she sobbed. "She's all I have left of David." She looked at me like I was a temporary obstacle, like I was young and replaceable. "Catherine works so much," she said, wiping her face. "It's too hard for her alone. I could give Abby a better life, more attention." The detective's voice stayed flat. "You understand you can't remove a child from a fit parent because you disagree with her schedule." Margaret's lips trembled. "I didn't have a choice," she whispered. "Abby is my only hope." No, she had choices. She chose control. That's what people never admit. They call it love because it sounds nicer. The fallout moved fast after that. A judge signed a temporary protective order. Margaret wasn't allowed to contact Abby directly. Any visitation had to be supervised. No pop-ins. No, just checking. No surprise appearances at school. CPS came by once, because of course they did. A caseworker looked at my kitchen, Abby's room, her clean backpack, her homework folder, and my hospital ID badge still clipped to my lanyard like a scar. She asked Abby if she felt safe. Abby said yes. Then she asked if anyone made her feel unsafe. Abby said quietly, "Grandma Maggie." That was enough. Margaret left town soon after, went to stay with her sister in another state, to recover. Because even villains need rest, apparently. Hartman faced charges. And suddenly, his confidential investigation didn't sound so official anymore. A week later, Mike came to our door. This time he didn't show up like he owned the place. He rang once, then waited. When I opened the door, he looked like a man who'd aged a year in 7 days. "Kate," he said quietly, "can we talk?" We sat in the living room. Abby did homework in her room, the way kids do when they're listening anyway. Mike stared at his hands. "I didn't know," he said again. "I swear, I thought my mom was just worried. She asked questions and I answered. I didn't think." I leaned back. "So you fed her information," I said, calm because I had no energy left for loud. Mike nodded. "Yes." He swallowed hard. "She kept saying I was the only man left in the family," he admitted. "That I should be your support. That David would have wanted it." I flinched at David's name again, like it still had teeth. Mike hesitated, then added, barely audible, "And that wasn't all." I waited. He looked up, eyes red. "I always liked you." The words landed heavy. "Even when David was alive," he said quickly, like confessing faster would make it less awful. "I never acted on it. Never would have. But after he died, I cared. Too much. And my mom, she used that. She knew I'd show up. She knew I'd try to help." He laughed once, bitter. "I was stupid." Abby appeared in the doorway then, like she'd been summoned. "Are you talking?" she asked. Mike dropped to his knees in front of her. "I'm sorry," he said, voice breaking. "I'm sorry you were scared because of me." Abby studied him for a long moment. Then she said, serious and simple, "You're not bad. Grandma Maggie tricked you." Mike's face crumpled. "That doesn't excuse me," he whispered. Abby walked over and took his hand. "But if you weren't around," she said softly, "maybe it would have been worse, because then we wouldn't have noticed something was wrong." I turned away so they wouldn't see my eyes, because sometimes an 8-year-old says something wise enough to break you. Mike didn't become family again overnight. He earned his way back like someone rebuilding a house after a fire. Slow, careful, no sudden movements. He stopped asking where we were going. He stopped trying to check things. He just showed up when asked, fixing a leaky faucet, picking Abby up from school if I got held late at the hospital, helping me drive out to the old lake cabin David loved so I could keep the little garden patch alive, because it felt wrong to let it die too. He told Abby stories about David as a kid, not to replace him, to keep him real. Abby listened like those stories were oxygen. Some nights, Mike and I sat at the kitchen table with tea and silence. Not romantic. Not yet. Just human. I started seeing him as a person, not just a role. Not my husband's brother. Not Margaret's son. Just Mike. And that made all the difference. 1 year later, spring came with lilacs and the kind of soft air that feels like permission to breathe again. Mike and I got married quietly. No spectacle, no performance. Abby wore a white dress and scattered flower petals down the aisle, beaming like she was carrying sunlight. After the ceremony, she hugged me tight. "Mom," she asked, voice small, "are you happy?" I kissed the top of her head. "I am," I said. "Because of you." She looked up at the sky. "Do you think Dad can see us?" My throat tightened. It still did, even after time. "Yes," I said. "I think he can. And I think he'd want us safe." Mike lifted Abby into his arms. "I'm not here to erase your dad," he told her gently. "We'll remember him. Always." Abby wrapped her arms around his neck. "I love Dad Mike," she declared, then added, just as firm, "and I love Dad David." And somehow, that made room in my chest for peace. Somewhere else, another city, another window, Margaret probably still stared out and called it heartbreak. Maybe it was. But heartbreak doesn't give you permission to hunt a child. We didn't cut her off entirely. Months later, after court reviews, contact was limited to supervised calls, brief, structured, and on our terms. She could call Abby, supervised, brief, structured. Boundaries she hated, until she finally learned them. And me? I learned something too. Love that demands control isn't love. It's ownership. So tell me, have you ever had someone claim they were just worried while tightening their grip around your life? How do you tell the difference between care and control? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. If this story hooked you, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. See you in the next video.